At the end of the last video, we got the central drive shaft spindle loaded into the lathe, and I was able to part off the sleeve that had been welded to the end of it. With that off, we can now remove the top plate and the main bearing and get those cleaned up. As always, I will share links down in the video description to all of the parts and tools I used in this video.
This bearing looks like it's in pretty good shape. Welding snodule right there. There's 50-year-old welding spatter on here.
As I go along here, I'm making a point to try to remove as much of the old welding spatter as I can.
The Rust-Oleum self-etching primer.
We still haven't picked ride colors, so this is just getting primer for now. This is our cleaned up main bearing. This is the Aetna G49, all cleaned up now, all greased up. It feels good. No problems with this at all, no worries. We don't have to replace it because I'm sure this was an expensive bearing. This has a static load of about 50,000 pounds, I think, is what it's rated for. If you have any thoughts on color schemes, we're open to suggestions here. I'm torn between doing something like a real Buck Rogers type retro color scheme or something bright and flashy the kids would like. The cars themselves are very retro looking, so I'm kind of leaning in that direction. So the heat has not let up around here, and I'm never one really to complain about the heat. I've always said that I would rather sweat than freeze. Once my fingers get cold, they just don't want to work properly. The humidity is not letting up, and it's made it rough, especially since our air conditioner that's 30 years old finally decided to bite the dust. Not quite sure what we're going to do there about that. Been batting it around a little bit, whether we want to go with something like a mini split or just another window unit. And truthfully, by the time we decide, the heat wave will probably be gone and it won't matter anymore. But if you have any AC solutions that you are particularly fond of that work well in your shop, let me hear about it down in the comments. I did manage to get the front cross braces stripped and primed, so that's one more thing off the to-do list. So they came out pretty good. Although I didn't make a lot of progress directly on the restoration, it didn't prevent me from doing more research into the ride and a lot of shopping. And that's what I've got here on the bench in front of me, a couple weeks worth of shopping. I thought we might open these boxes and I'll tell you what's inside of them and what I plan to do with them. First off, we need to do some cleanup on the upper bearing journal on that main central spindle. Like I said, it looks like that maybe it was run without a bearing for a number of years possibly. It's really scored up and it needs some attention. I made the steady rest extra large because my hope is to be able to pass a boring bar through it and use that to clean up the journal. I've got this large boring bar and a holder, but unfortunately the holder only goes up to 1 inch. So my plan is to weld a piece of tubing to the end of this that will hold the boring bar. So here's our first package. This should actually be the piece of tubing that we're going to use to try to mount that boring bar to the tool holder. There it is. So we'll cut a piece of this off, and we're going to weld it right onto here. So if it turns out there's too much stick out, too much chatter, and that doesn't work for us, I have a plan B. We're going to try to use this old tool post grinder. So back when we pulled the spindle out of the tower, and I'll leave a link to that video up here, we discovered that the lower bearing had, some of the ball bearings had actually sheared and split. And at that time I said that I did some research, discovered that the bearing was still available for about $80. Well, I found a new old stock one on eBay for about $50, and that is what should be in this box. Well, it's still in a box. That's a good sign. It's still in plastic. Let's cut this open and see what we got here. That looks beautiful. And there it is. Aetna E25. That is the original part. Right down to this original hole, which I was not sure if that was actually original or not. Because the hole that's in the existing bearing, it almost looked like it was put in there by hand, but apparently that's factory original. So this is going to be great. So we need to create a new sleeve for the bottom of the drive shaft to attach the drive shaft to the sprocket. The one we cut off here, I really don't want to reuse this since we had to cut it the top and the bottom. It's full of grease. It's a big mess. So my plan here is just to replace this. And that is what should be in the next box that we can use to make this piece. We'll cut this open. It's a box within a box, actually. They did a super nice job packing that. Got a little note. What's it say? It says, "Thank you." The original tubing just had 1/4 inch wall thickness. This is 5/16. So this is going to have to be bored to fit. But there's our piece of tubing, and that will replace that piece of tubing. So I think that will work out well. Here's another one of these jobs that doesn't really need to be tackled to the end, but it's something I can do right now, so let's get it done. I want to clean up the pins that hold the light bars to the tower. I think we're just going to sandblast these. So the pins came out pretty good, again, just in primer, but the chains that hold these hairpin clips, or R-keys as we like to call them, are in pretty rough shape. And I have a replacement for these chains, and that's what should be in the next envelope. So this is what I'm planning on replacing the chains with. This is actually stainless steel cables. Little lanyards, they're plastic coated, and I have plenty of new clips as well. So the new plan is to put this in here. Alright. So that'll be like that. So I think these stainless steel lanyards will be a nice upgrade over those existing chains. Okay, next up, lighting for the ride. I decided to try what are called cabochons. If you've been to a carnival, you've seen these lights before. They're the plastic fluted lights in various colors that adorn most rides these days. If you didn't know what they were called, well, now you do. The problem with these lights is that they require a 3/4 inch mounting hole, and the holes in our channels are much bigger, about 1 3/8 inches. So I'm going to try to design and 3D print bushings that'll allow me to put these lights into those openings. Now, they had a minimum order of 20 pieces, so I would have liked to have been able just to order one to see if it was going to work, but I had to take the plunge and get at least 20 of them. And these lights, you have to order them all as individual pieces. So you have the lens, and you have a cap and a socket and a bushing, and then a nut for the end of them. This I have decided on a color scheme. I'm going to go with red, orange, and yellow. They go up the sides of the towers, and I figure that's going to kind of replicate the flames of the rocket, so that kind of made sense to me. Now this type of fixture is actually an insulation displacement, and that means there's these two spikes in the back, and you lay your wires in here, and you crank this nut down, and that actually pierces through the insulation to make the electrical connection. So as I said, I need to have some way to mount this this 3/4 inch piece through there. My idea here is to design two washers, one that'll go on each side of the channel, and the light will go through it, and that will actually hold the whole assembly together. So what I've come up with is this washer here with a little step in it, and an indent piece to tab it together. And it's going to go one of these on the inside of the channel, and then another one on the outside of the channel, and then they'll get compressed together between the lens and the backing, and I think that's going to work. The problem with 3D printing, though, is that it's slow. It's taking 3.5 hours to print just 16 of these bushings. And of course, the nice thing about 3D printing, though, is you can just start the printer and walk away. Now, there's 48 lights. That means I need 96 bushings. So that's going to take about 21 hours to print. But before you know it, they're done. And I've got 112 of them printed here, and I think they're going to work out pretty well. These are printed in PETG, which is the plastic that you can print with that is the least affected by the sun. And since only a very small piece of this is going to actually stick out and ever see the light of day, I think these are going to last really well. Coming to the end of our shipments here, while studying the original brochures, I noticed when I looked really close there was some sort of ornament on top of each car, and upon further research discovered that they were actually a hood ornament that was either called a bomb sight or a torpedo, and that was a feature that I really wanted to replicate in our restoration here. Unfortunately, doing some research and looking on the collector's market determined that they are extremely expensive, and the chance of finding 5 matching ones was looking pretty slim. But I did find one that was not too outrageous of a price, and I decided if I could just get a hold of one that I could mold it and cast it and make copies of it. So I found this one, torpedo hood ornament, chrome plated to fit Ford, Chevy, Plymouth, Hudson, 1946, 1947. So this is what we found. And this is roughly what was on the front of all of the cars. I think it had the pointy part facing forward so that it was doing as much or as little damage to the children as possible. You know, things were different back then. Now, this does have some surface blemishes that I'm going to need to repair. But like I said, I'm going to be molding and casting this, so I don't need this to be perfect. I just need to be smooth. And, you know, because I don't want to pick up that imperfection in the mold that I make. So I contacted the folks at Smooth On and asked them, you know, what I should use to mold and cast these with. And they made some recommendations. And after we chatted about the project for a while, they offered to donate the materials to the project, which I'm certainly thankful for. And I would have used Smooth On anyways, because I had originally contacted them, but I'm very appreciative that they donated these materials, and we'll be going over this in depth in a future video. But for now, let's get it opened up and see what they actually sent here. This should be the material for doing both the molding and the casting of this hood ornament. The Smooth On liquid plastic Smooth Cast 66D. This is actually the resin that will be used to make the copies. And then this is the Mold Max 30, which is actually going to be what we make the mold out of. So this is the material we're going to be using. And then in this envelope here, I think this is just some clay. that we're going to be using. Yeah, this is clay. This actually I did purchase, but we have to actually, we're going to be making a 2-part mold, so we're going to need the clay to build up. And like I say, I'm going to go through all of that in a future video. But we have it here on hand now, so that's another part of the project that we can tackle. So now I think we're all caught up. All those little projects that I've been working on that didn't warrant a video of their own, I've now shared the details with you, and we'll be moving forward on all those different projects. If you want to see how we got to this point, or check out any of the other projects I've worked on, click those links to the left and I'll catch you over there.